I am not resisting, and I am not afraid. I know my rights, and I would appreciate it if you stopped blocking my way.
Handcuffed. Right there between aisle 7 and a blinking checkout screen, cold metal closed around my wrists before I could even finish saying I would pay. The sound was small. Just a click. But it echoed. People turned. Cart stopped. Someone whispered something under their breath and then another voice followed, softer, sharper, like they had been waiting for a moment like this. I did not pull away. I did not argue. I just stood there, holding a $12 bottle of fever medicine that suddenly felt heavier than anything I had carried all week. My name is Angela Brooks, and in that moment, I was not a mother trying to get back home to her son burning up at 102 degrees. I was just another problem to solve. Officer Daniel Reeves did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Authority sat on him like a uniform beneath the uniform. Place your hands behind your back. Calm. Final. Practiced. I followed the instruction before my mind could catch up. The fluorescent lights above flickered once, a soft buzz that made everything feel colder. I could smell the sharp plastic of new packaging, the faint sweetness of overripe fruit somewhere behind me, and underneath it all, the quiet tension of people pretending not to stare. But they were staring. I could feel it. On my skin. On my neck. On the back of my thoughts. You are being detained on suspicion of shoplifting. He said it like he had said it 1,000 times. Maybe he had. I looked down at my basket. Bread. Medicine. A small carton of milk. That was it. Nothing hidden. Nothing taken. Just not yet paid for. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Words felt fragile here. Like they could break before they reached him. And I had learned something a long time ago. Sometimes explaining only makes people more certain you are guilty. A child laughed. Quick. Nervous. Cut off by a parent who did not want to get involved. A man 2 lines over shook his head slowly, like this confirmed something he already believed. Officer Reeves adjusted his grip, not rough, not gentle either. Just controlled. His radio crackled once, then went silent. His badge caught the light. Clean. Polished. Reflecting everything. Except doubt. I felt the cool air press against my face. My pulse stayed steady. That surprised me. Maybe because this was not new. Not the cuffs. Not the looks. Not the quiet assumptions hanging thicker than the air. But something about today was different. Something small. Something I could not fully name yet. Maybe it was the way his eyes did not quite meet mine. Or the way his partner, standing a few feet back, shifted just slightly when I mentioned I had my wallet. Or maybe it was the receipt printer behind the counter. It kept spitting out paper no one picked up. Line after line. Like proof no one wanted to read. I took a breath. Not deep. Just enough. Enough to choose what came next. If this moment feels familiar to you, if you have ever stood in a place where no one was really listening, stay with me, and if you are here right now, tell me what time it is where you are and what city you are watching from, because moments like this happen everywhere, just not always this quiet. I lifted my head. Looked at him directly for the first time. Not challenging. Not pleading. Just steady. Then I said one name. Call Marcus Hale. And for the first time since the cuffs closed, something shifted. Not loud. Not obvious. Just a pause. Small enough most people missed it. But I did not. Because I was watching him. And for a fraction of a second, Officer Daniel Reeves was not completely sure anymore. I saw it in the way his fingers tightened just slightly around the edge of the cuff, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me to feel the hesitation travel through the metal into my skin, like a question he did not want to ask out loud, and in that brief silence, everything around us kept moving but also somehow slowed down at the same time, the scanner beeped at the next register, a woman cleared her throat. A cartwheel squeaked as someone tried to quietly pass behind us, but the space between me and him felt sealed, like the rest of the store had faded into something distant and unimportant, and I realized then that this was the moment that always decides everything, not the accusation, not the cuffs, but the space right after. When someone chooses whether to see you as a person or stay comfortable seeing you as a problem, and I held his gaze without pushing, without shrinking, just steady, because I did not have the energy to be anything else, not today, not with my son waiting at home wrapped in a thin blanket that did not hold enough warmth, his small body burning against my hand when I left, his voice weak but trying to be brave when he said he would be okay, that I should not worry, and that memory pressed against my chest harder than the cuffs around my wrists, because every minute I stood here was another minute he was alone, and that mattered more than whatever this moment was trying to turn into. Officer Reeves shifted his weight, just slightly, like the ground under him had changed in a way he could not explain, and his partner glanced at him, not speaking, just watching, waiting for direction that did not come as quickly as it should have, and I could feel the eyes on us growing heavier. Again, people leaning into the pause now, sensing something was off even if they did not know what, and I wondered how many times he had done this without thinking, how many times it had been simple, clear, unquestioned, and I did not blame him for that, not entirely, because systems teach people where to look and where not to look, who to question and who to trust. And I had lived long enough to understand that I was often placed on the wrong side of that line before I even spoke, but still, I stayed calm, because calm was the only thing I owned in this moment, calm and the truth, and sometimes that is all you get. His radio crackled again, louder this time, a voice asking for an update, routine, procedural, something that should have pushed him forward, but instead it seemed to pull him back just enough to think, and that was new. I could see it in the way his jaw shifted, in the way his eyes flicked down for a second like he was replaying something. Maybe the name, maybe the tone in my voice, maybe the fact that I did not sound afraid in the way he expected, because fear has a pattern and I was not following it, not because I was stronger than fear, but because I had learned how to carry it quietly, and that difference matters, even if people do not always understand why. I adjusted my hand slightly, the metal pressing against my skin reminding me that none of this had changed yet, not really, but something had started, something small but real, and I leaned into that without forcing it, without rushing it, because rushing would break it, and I needed him to reach the next step on his own. That was the only way it would hold. Who is Marcus Hale? He finally asked, not loud, not aggressive, just controlled curiosity slipping through the cracks of authority, and I almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because that question meant he had already stepped out of certainty, and once someone leaves certainty, even for a second, they cannot go back the same way. I met his eyes again, steady, grounded, carrying everything I had not said, and I answered quietly, someone who knows exactly what happens when assumptions replace facts, and the word settled between us, not as a threat, not as a defense, but as something heavier, something that made the air shift again, and this time, he felt it too. The air shifted again, heavier this time, like something unseen had just entered the room without opening a door, and Officer Reeves did not respond right away, but his eyes changed, not softer, not kinder, just more alert, like a man who suddenly realized the situation in front of him might not be as simple as it looked, and that hesitation spread outward. His partner straightened slightly. The cashier behind the counter stopped pretending to scan items and just stared, even the receipt printer finally went quiet, as if the store itself was waiting to see what would happen next, and then it came, not from me, not from him, but from his radio, a sharp crackle followed by a voice that was no longer casual, no longer routine. Unit 12, confirm status, we just received a priority ping connected to your location, and that word priority landed differently, it carried weight, the kind that does not get used unless something above the normal chain of command is already paying attention, and Reeves reacted to that, fast, instinctively, his posture tightening, his hand moving toward the radio like muscle memory took over before thought could catch up. This is Reeves, situation under control, he said, but even as he spoke, his voice was not as steady as before. There was a slight shift, barely noticeable, but real, like a crack forming beneath polished certainty, and the reply came almost immediately, too fast, too direct, stand by, do not proceed further until instructed, and that was not normal. Everyone in that space felt it, even if they did not understand it, because authority had just been interrupted by a higher authority, and that changes everything. Reeves froze for half a second, then looked at me again, really looked this time, not at my hands, not at the cuffs, but at my face, searching for something he had not needed to search for before, and I did not look away. Because I had already crossed that line, there was no going back to silence. Now, and I could feel the tension building again, but this time it was different. It was not directed at me alone, it was spreading, touching him, touching the space between us, touching everyone watching, and then another sound cut through it, a phone vibrating, sharp, insistent, coming from his chest pocket, not the radio, not the standard channel, something personal, something direct, and he hesitated before pulling it out, just for a second, like he already knew what he was about to see would matter, and when he looked at the screen, everything stopped, not physically, the store still existed, people still breathed, lights still flickered, but for him, for me, for this moment, everything narrowed into that one small glowing rectangle in his hand, his jaw tightened, his shoulders squared, and for the first time since he put those cuffs on me, he did not look like he was in control of the situation. He looked like someone who had just been pulled into something bigger than himself. His partner leaned in slightly, trying to see the screen, but Reeves angled it away instinctively, not hiding it, just protecting the moment, and then he answered, slow, deliberate, Officer Reeves speaking, and there was no speaker, no amplification, but I could hear the change in his breathing, the slight pause before he spoke again, the way his spine straightened as if someone on the other end had just reminded him of something he could not ignore, and whatever was said to him, it did not need to be loud, it did not need to be repeated, because the effect was immediate. His eyes flicked to me again, sharper now, more focused, not with suspicion, not with dismissal, but with something closer to realization, and that realization carried weight, heavy, undeniable, like a door opening in his mind that he could not close again, and the room felt it. The quiet grew deeper, thicker, pressing in from all sides, and I stood there, still in cuffs, still in the same place, but no longer in the same position, because something had shifted beyond appearances, beyond assumptions, beyond the version of me he had decided on when he first walked up, and in that moment, without raising my voice, without moving a step, I was no longer just the woman at the checkout, I was the center of a situation he did not fully understand yet, and that uncertainty was the beginning of everything changing. Whatever voice came through that phone did not need to raise itself to be heard, because the change in Officer Reeves was immediate, physical, undeniable. His shoulders squared in a different way now, not with authority, but with awareness, and when he spoke again, his tone carried something new, something controlled but no longer certain. Yes, sir, she is here. No, she is not resisting, and that last part lingered, like he was repeating it not just to the person on the other end, but to himself, as if confirming that everything he had assumed about this situation did not quite match what was actually happening, and the silence that followed stretched tighter, sharper, like a wire pulled too far. His partner shifted again, this time stepping closer, his eyes moving between Reeves and me, trying to read what had not been said out loud, but there was nothing clear to read, only tension building in layers, and then Reeves listened, really listened, his head tilting slightly, his grip on the phone tightening just enough to show that whatever he was hearing mattered more than anything in this store, more than the watching crowd, more than the original accusation, and when he finally spoke again, his voice dropped lower, almost careful. Understood. I will hold position, and that phrase changed everything, because holding position meant he could not move forward, could not complete what he started, could not justify the action already taken without reconsidering it, and that kind of pause is dangerous for someone used to certainty, because it forces reflection, and reflection invites doubt, and doubt spreads fast, especially in a room full of watching eyes. I could feel it shifting again. People no longer looking at me the same way, not fully, but enough for their attention to split, some still seeing what they expected to see, others starting to question it, and that divide created its own kind of pressure, subtle but real, like the air had thickened just enough to make breathing noticeable, and I stayed still, not because I had nowhere to go, but because movement now would break the moment, and this moment was the only thing working in my favor. The cuffs were still tight around my wrists, the metal pressing into my skin, grounding me in the reality that nothing had actually changed yet, but something had begun, something Reeves could not ignore anymore. His eyes lifted from the phone and landed on me again, slower this time, more deliberate, like he was seeing details he had skipped over before, the calm in my posture, the steadiness in my breathing, the lack of panic where panic was expected, and that difference mattered. It disrupted the pattern he relied on, and patterns are what make decisions easy. Without them, everything becomes heavier, more complicated, more real, and he was feeling that now. I could see it in the way his jaw shifted, in the way his stance adjusted, not stepping back, not stepping forward, just holding, waiting, and then his partner finally spoke, low, uncertain, "Daniel, what is going on?" And that question was not just about the situation, it was about him, about the shift everyone could feel but no one could explain, and Reeves did not answer right away, because he did not have an answer yet, not one he trusted, not one that fit the version of events he had started with, and that gap between action and understanding widened, stretching the tension further. The cashier behind the counter glanced at the untouched items in my basket, then back at Reeves, then at me, like she was trying to piece together something that did not add up anymore. And somewhere behind us, someone quietly set their groceries down and stepped away, not wanting to be part of whatever this was becoming, because people recognize when a simple moment is turning into something bigger, something that might carry consequences beyond what they can see, and that awareness spread, slow but steady, like a ripple moving through still water, and Reeves felt it. He had to, because he shifted again, adjusting the position of the cuffs, not loosening them, not tightening them, just acknowledging their presence in a way that felt different, like he was suddenly aware of what they represented. Not just control, but responsibility, and responsibility is heavier than control when you are no longer sure you are right. His phone lowered slightly, but he did not end the call, not yet, because whatever was coming next had not arrived, and we were all suspended in that space, waiting, watching, holding, and I stood there, steady, silent, feeling the weight of every second stretch longer than it should, knowing that whatever happened next would not just resolve this moment, it would define it, for him, for me, for everyone who had witnessed the shift from certainty to doubt, and that kind of shift does not go back to the way it was before. The word understood did not end the call, it opened something heavier, because the voice on the other end kept speaking, low, controlled, and whatever it said made Officer Reeves go completely still, not frozen in confusion this time, but locked in a kind of realization that does not come with comfort, only consequence, and when he answered again his tone changed in a way everyone could hear even if they did not understand why. "Yes, sir." "I see." I was not aware, and that phrase landed harder than anything before it, not aware, because it meant something had already been missed, something important enough to reach him from outside this room, from above whatever authority he thought he held here, and the tension snapped tighter. His partner stepped in closer now, no longer pretending this was routine. "Daniel, talk to me," he said, quieter but firmer, and Reeves did not respond right away because his focus was no longer here. It was on the voice that was guiding him through something he could not control anymore, and then it came, the shift that pushed everything to the edge. "No, sir, she has not been processed." "Yes, sir, I understand the implications," and that word implications echoed in my chest, because implications do not belong to simple misunderstandings, they belong to consequences that reach further than the moment, further than the store, further than the cuffs around my wrists, and I felt it then, not relief, not yet, but pressure building in a different direction, no longer pressing down on me alone, but pushing outward, touching him, touching the space, touching every eye still fixed on us, and Reeves ended the call slowly, like he did not trust his hands to move too fast, and when the screen went dark, he did not put the phone away right away, he just held it there for a second, staring at his own reflection in it, like he was seeing himself from a different angle for the first time. And when he finally looked back at me, the certainty was gone, completely gone, replaced by something heavier, something closer to accountability, and that is when the room changed again, not subtle this time, not quiet, but sharp, visible, undeniable, because everyone could feel it. The balance had shifted, and it was no longer clear who held control. His partner looked between us, confusion turning into concern. The cashier took a small step back. Someone near the entrance pulled out their phone, not hiding it, not pretending anymore. Because people recognize when a moment matters, and they want to capture it, to hold proof that something real happened, and Reeves saw that too, his jaw tightening as he became aware of the eyes, the presence, the weight of witnesses, and that made everything more fragile, more exposed, more dangerous for him to get wrong. He took a breath, deeper this time, and finally spoke, not to the room, not to his partner, but to me. "Why did you say that name?" And the question carried more than curiosity now, it carried urgency, because he needed the answer to align with what he had just been told, he needed it to make sense of the shift he could not ignore. And I held his gaze, steady, grounded, because This was the moment that decides whether truth breaks through or gets buried again, because he knows me, I said quietly, and that answer landed differently than anything before, not dramatic, not loud, but final in a way that left no room for interpretation, and his reaction was immediate, not visible in movement, but in stillness, deeper stillness. The kind that comes when a person realizes the situation is no longer what they thought it was at all. His partner exhaled slowly, almost under his breath, like he was catching up to something Reeves had just realized ahead of him, and the silence stretched again, but this time it was not empty, it was full, heavy with everything that had just shifted, and I stood there, cuffs still tight, time still moving, my son still waiting at home, but now the weight in the room was no longer mine to carry alone, and if you are still listening, tell me what you would do in this moment. Because sometimes the truth does not shout, it waits, and when it finally speaks, everything changes. The silence after my words did not hold the power I thought it would. It did not break the moment open or shift the weight completely. Instead it lingered, stretched thin, like something fragile that could collapse at any second, and I felt it slipping, slowly, quietly, because Officer Reeves did not respond the way I expected. He did not step back, he did not unlock the cuffs, he did not even lower his guard. Instead his expression hardened again, not the same as before, not careless, but controlled in a different way, like someone trying to regain footing after losing it for just a second, and that shift was enough to change everything back. The room adjusted with him. People leaned again toward the version of reality they understood, the one where I was still the problem, the one where nothing had actually been proven, only suggested, and suggestions do not carry weight without action. His partner crossed his arms now, more certain, like the confusion had settled into a quiet agreement that whatever this was, it had gone far enough. Daniel, he said, lower this time, firmer. We cannot just stand here, and Reeves nodded slightly, not taking his eyes off me, but no longer searching either, just deciding, and that decision felt heavier than anything before because it was not based on certainty, it was based on control, and control does not need to be right, it just needs to move forward. He reached for his radio again, this time with purpose. Dispatch, confirm identity check on Angela Brooks, he said, voice steady, procedural, and that name, my name, spoken like that. Stripped of everything I am beyond this moment, reduced to a line in a system waiting to be verified, hit me harder than the cuffs ever could, because systems do not care about context, they only care about matches and flags and records that rarely tell the whole story, and I felt something shift inside me then, not fear, but the quiet realization that this might not resolve the way I hoped, not here, not now, not in front of these people, because even truth needs time to be recognized. And time was exactly what I did not have. My son was still at home, still waiting, still trusting that I would come back through that door with what he needed, and every second I stood here was a second I was failing him, and that thought pressed harder than anything else, making the room feel smaller, tighter, like the air had been pulled away just enough to make breathing noticeable again. Reeves listened to the radio response, short, clipped confirmations that meant nothing to anyone else but carried weight for him. And whatever he heard, it did not bring clarity, it brought more hesitation, more tension, because uncertainty in a system is not relief, it is complication, and complication does not help the person already in cuffs, it delays, it drags, it holds you in place while others decide what to do with you. His eyes flicked back to me, not questioning now, just measuring, like he was trying to balance what he had been told against what he was seeing, and for a moment I thought he might speak again, might ask something that would open the space back up, but he did not. Instead he stepped slightly to the side, adjusting his position, creating distance not just physically but emotionally. And that distance was enough for the room to settle into a new version of the moment, one where the drama quieted just enough to feel resolved even though nothing had actually been resolved at all. The cashier returned to her station, slower, uncertain, but moving. People shifted their carts again, not leaving, but no longer frozen. The tension diluted just enough to become background noise instead of center focus, and I stood there, still in cuffs, still waiting. But now with the weight pressing back onto me, heavier than before, because hope had entered the room and then pulled back, and that is always worse than never having it at all. And in that space, quiet, controlled, unresolved, it felt like I was slipping back into the role I had been placed in from the beginning, the one that does not get the benefit of time, the one that gets processed, recorded, moved along, and for the first time since I said his name, I felt the possibility that none of it would be enough, not the truth, not the calm, not even the connection I thought would change everything, because sometimes the system moves forward simply because it already started, and stopping it requires more than just being right. The system kept moving, slow and heavy, like it had already decided its path and nothing I said could redirect it, and for a moment I let that weight settle, not because I accepted it, but because I needed to feel exactly where it pressed the hardest, because that is where truth pushes back, and Officer Reeves stood there waiting for confirmation from a screen, from a voice, from anything that would allow him to continue without questioning himself again, and that was the moment I realized. Something simple but sharp, he was not waiting for truth, he was waiting for permission, and that difference changed everything. My wrists ached under the metal, the cold biting deeper now, grounding me in the fact that time was still moving forward whether this resolved or not. My son was still alone, still waiting, and that thought cut through everything else, clearer than fear, clearer than doubt, and it pulled something steady back into place inside me. Because I did not have the luxury to let this moment drag on, I shifted my hands slightly, enough for the metal to press and remind both of us that this was real, still unresolved, still active, and I spoke again, not louder, not desperate, just precise. You already got the call, and that stopped him, not fully, but enough. His eyes lifted from the space between us back to my face, sharper now, more alert, because I had named something he thought was contained, something he thought only he understood in that moment. His partner glanced between us again, tension rising. Back up, thicker this time, because now there was something he was not part of, something he could not see but could feel shifting around him. "What are you saying?" Reeves asked, and this time there was no distance in his voice, no authority covering it, just direct focus, and I held that, steady, grounded. "I am saying you already know this is not a simple stop," I answered, and the words did not need to be louder, they just needed to land, and they did. Because his posture changed again, not back to certainty, but forward into something else, something closer to realization, the kind that does not come from outside instruction, but from inside recognition, and that is harder to ignore. His phone buzzed again, sharp, insistent, and this time he did not hesitate. He looked at it immediately, and whatever name flashed across that screen, whatever connection lined up in his mind in that exact second, it hit him all at once. Not gradually, not softly, but all at once, because his entire expression shifted, his jaw tightened, his eyes widened just enough to break the control he had been holding on to, and then he looked at me again, really looked, like he was seeing the full picture for the first time, not the version he assumed, not the one the room had built around me, but the one that connected everything that had just happened, the call, the name, the pause, the pressure from above, and that connection landed heavy, undeniable. "You are," he started, then stopped, because saying it out loud would make it real, and reality carries consequences. His partner stepped closer now, confusion turning into urgency. "Daniel, what is it?" But Reeves did not answer him, he could not yet, because he was still processing the shift from control to accountability, and I did not move, did not push, did not fill the silence, because this moment belonged to him now. The realization had to complete on its own. That is the only way it holds. The store felt different again, not quieter, but sharper, like every detail had come into focus all at once. The lights, the air, the people, all of it present, all of it watching, waiting, and then it happened, not loud, not dramatic, but final. His hand moved, slow but certain, to the cuffs, not adjusting, not checking, but unlocking. The metal released with a soft click, the same sound that started everything, but this time it did not echo the same way. This time it cut clean through the tension, and for a second no one moved. Not him, not me, not the people watching, because everyone felt it. The shift was complete, the balance had changed, and nothing about this moment could go back to what it was before. The sound of the cuffs releasing did not just free my wrists, it split the moment in two, before and after, and everything that followed belonged to the after, a space where silence carried weight instead of judgment, where every eye in the store shifted not just toward me but toward him, because now the question was no longer what I had done, it was what he had done, and Officer Reeves felt it immediately, the pressure of that shift settling onto his shoulders heavier than the badge he wore. His hand stayed near the cuffs for a second longer than necessary, like he needed to confirm they were truly open, like he understood that reversing an action does not erase it, it only exposes it, and when he finally stepped back, it was not a retreat, it was an acknowledgement, quiet but undeniable. His partner looked at him, then at me, confusion turning into something closer to realization, because now the pieces were starting to connect in a way that could not be ignored. The call, the hesitation, the name, and the release, and that realization moved through the room like a current, subtle but powerful. The cashier lowered her gaze for a moment, then looked back up, this time not at me, but at Reeves, as if trying to understand how something so certain had unraveled so completely, and I rubbed my wrist slowly, not dramatically, just enough to feel the warmth return where the metal had been, grounding myself in the reality that this had changed, that I was no longer held in place by someone else's assumption, but the weight of the moment did not lift completely, because justice does not arrive as relief, it arrives as clarity, and clarity forces everyone to see what they would rather move past. Reeves cleared his throat, a small sound, almost lost in the space, but it drew attention back to him, and when he spoke, his voice was different again, not authoritative, not uncertain, but careful, measured. Angela. I need to correct this, and the words came slower than before, like each one had to be chosen with intention, because now they mattered in a way they did not before. His partner shifted beside him, stepping back slightly, giving space without being told, because even he could feel that the situation had moved beyond routine procedure into something that required acknowledgement, not just action. Reeves glanced briefly at the people around us, then back to me, and for the first time, there was no distance in his eyes, no filter of assumption, just direct recognition. There was no confirmed cause for detention, he said, and that statement did more than explain, it exposed, it stripped the moment down to its truth, that this had been built on perception, not fact, and that distinction hung in the air, heavy, undeniable. Someone near the front let out a quiet breath they had been holding, another person lowered their phone slowly. Not recording anymore, just watching. Because the moment had shifted from spectacle to consequence, and consequences do not need noise to be felt, they settle in quietly, deeply, and change how things are seen long after the moment ends. Reeves continued, his voice steady but no longer shielded, "You are free to go," and the simplicity of that sentence carried more weight than the accusation that started everything, because freedom given after it was taken feels different. It carries memory, it carries impact, it carries the knowledge that it should not have been taken at all, and I nodded once, not in acceptance of what happened, but in acknowledgement that this part was over, at least here, at least now. I reached for my basket, the same items still inside, untouched, unchanged, but the meaning of them felt different now, because they were never the issue, they were just the excuse, and as I turned slightly toward the register, the cashier hesitated, then spoke softly, "I can ring that up for you," and her voice carried something new, not pity, not discomfort, but awareness, the kind that comes after witnessing something real, and I stepped forward, placing the items down one by one. The scanner beeped again, the same sound as before, but now it did not echo with tension, it just marked the moment moving forward, steady, normal, as it should have been from the beginning, and behind me, Reeves remained where he was, not leaving, not speaking, just standing in the space where the shift had happened, carrying the weight of it, because justice is not just about setting someone free, it is about making sure the moment that took that freedom is seen, understood, and not forgotten. I paid for the medicine the same way I had planned to from the beginning, one item at a time, the scanner marking each one with a clean, simple sound that should have been the only sound that mattered today, and as the receipt printed out in a quiet line of paper, I folded it carefully, not because it proved anything, but because it reminded me that the truth does not always arrive when you need it. Sometimes it arrives late, after you have already been seen the wrong way, after something inside you has already been tested, and I picked up the small bag, light in my hand but heavy in meaning, because everything that had just happened did not disappear when the cuffs came off, it stayed, in the way people looked at me, in the way Officer Reeves stood a few steps behind, still, silent, carrying a weight that had nothing to do with authority anymore and everything to do with understanding, and I did not look back right away, not because I was angry, not because I wanted to ignore him, but because some moments do not need words to finish, they need distance, they need space to settle into what they truly are. I walked toward the exit, steady, each step grounded, the automatic doors sliding open with a soft mechanical breath, letting in warm air that felt different on my skin, not because it changed, but because I had. And just before I crossed that line, I paused, not turning fully, just enough to let my voice reach behind me without raising it. "Next time, look twice," I said, simple, direct, not as a warning, not as a challenge, but as something more lasting, something that sits in the mind longer than any apology, because this was never just about me, it was about the pattern, the quick decision, the assumption that fills in gaps before truth has a chance to speak, and I stepped outside, the light softer, the noise of the parking lot distant but real, cars moving, people living. The world continuing without knowing how close this moment had come to going a different way, and as I walked toward my car, I thought about how easily it could have ended differently, how one name, one pause, one decision to listen instead of continue, can change everything, not just for the person in cuffs, but for the one holding them, because power is not tested when it is used, it is tested when it is questioned, when it is forced to slow down and see what it missed, and that is where real change begins, not in loud moments, not in dramatic corrections, but in quiet realizations that stay with you long. After the moment passes, I opened the car door and sat down, the seat still warm from the sun, the bag resting beside me, and I let out a breath I had been holding since the first click of metal, not relief, not fully, but release, because I was already thinking about my son, about getting back, about what actually mattered beyond this moment, and as I started the engine, I knew something else had shifted too, something that does not show on the surface but stays underneath, the understanding that being calm is not weakness, that holding your ground without raising your voice is not surrender, it is strength, real strength, the kind that does not need to prove itself loudly to be real. And somewhere behind me, inside that store, a different kind of silence was settling, one that would not be forgotten easily, because once you see the line between assumption and truth, you cannot unsee it, and if you are hearing this right now, think about the last time you made a quick judgment, the last time you filled in a story before knowing it fully, and ask yourself if you would still make that same choice after this, because moments like this do not just belong to one person. They belong to all of us, and the way we choose to see each other is what decides whether they repeat or change.